Bowie, super coach. What an amazing morning. Look at the bridge and the moon. Beautiful. And then we've got little Roxy here as well, who's my assistant. Don't worry, Jess, you're not out of a job. Roxy's just the head of love for Adrian Bo coaching and training. Jess is an outstanding EA and assistant to me, so thank you, Jess, for your work this year. Okay, so you're going to make a lot of phone calls this week, right? And what you're going to hear a lot of from clients is, oh, just give me a call in the new year. Now, it's incredibly important to provide yourself with an opportunity that you actually may be able to get instructions this side of Christmas with a view to launch it next year. And the way to do that is to ask the question, no problem, I'm very happy to call you in the new year, Adrian. However, is that with an intention to making a decision on which agent you'd like to appoint because you already have made a decision to sell? Or is it with a view to arrange an appraisal for you to potentially contemplate selling in the new year? Just listen to that again and again. And I'm telling you, that dialogue in particular will create a binary response. It'll either be, oh no, it's to make a decision on an agent. Now, if that's the case, then you need to be able to be prepared to say, well, I'm working and I'd love to come and have a chat to you. And given you've already made the decision, I'd love to be appointed as your agent, and I'd love to sit down with you and provide you my strategy and my plan that is extremely compelling, that creates an 85 to 100% clearance rate this year in particular. And that way we hit the ground running in 2025. And what I can do is actually start talking to buyers over the break, because I know I'm going to receive a lot of phone calls. I'm not going anywhere, and the statistics tell us that realestate.com and domain.com receive their highest number of inquiries and views in late December, early January. So how do you feel about that? So I think it's really important that if they've made a decision, give yourself an opportunity to meet with them and provide a compelling strategy on why you should be appointed as the agent. Now, if the response is, oh no, look, we definitely haven't made any decisions yet, we really need the Christmas break to discuss it and to contemplate whether, if or not, we will be selling. And if that's the case and you still have tried to make an appointment for this week and there's resistance, then obviously place them in your CRM and follow them up on the. That's how quickly you need to be doing this, guys. I'm telling you now, the amount of inquiry that's going to be coming through will be huge in 2025. Now, what are some other tips around prospecting? Okay, as you know, people use a lot of scripts and dialogues. I despise scripts and dialogues. What I would rather use is a list of objectives. So if you're nurturing your database, for example, what I'd rather do is have a list of objectives in front of me, and that way you can sprinkle your personality on top of those objectives in order to create some sort of dialogue, not a script. So what are the objectives? Number one is to introduce yourself. Now that's got a lot more to do with it than just a basic introduction. I'll come back to that because I'm going to do a role play. And what I mean by that is obviously you introduce yourself, you introduce the company you're with, and if you're an associate agent, you should introduce and mention that you work alongside that agent. And if you are the lead agent, then I'd be mentioning that you work alongside the franchisor. So I'll talk to you a little bit about that when I do the role play. Number two, acknowledge the previous notes or the previous transaction. What do I mean by that? If you've sold them a property or they bought off you, or you provided an appraisal 3 months ago, acknowledge that and talk about that and ask them if they've had any capital improvements since then, and that way you can provide a price update immediately on the phone. Number three is to provide some type of result since you've spoken to them last. So just listed or just sold that is relevant to them, and that way you're showing and displaying that you're adding value, and it could even be an off market, and that's even better because they may not have access to that information. Number four would be to go straight for an appraisal. So the dialogue would sound something like, how do you feel about providing an appraisal on your property, given there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace, and given that I can provide you incredible clarity and forensic data around why we feel now is a great time to be selling your property. So always look to do that. Number 5 would be to make a brief note on every conversation that you've just had. And number 6 would be a retask follow-up, whether through that's your CRM or through your calendar, whatever it might be. So they're the 6 points, really critical, and that follow-up should be no later than 90 days. So if they say to you, I'm getting carried out in a box, that's a 90-day phone call. If it's like I'm renovating and I may want to get an idea of what it's worth after the kitchen's been done, well, that's a 3-week phone call, really critical. So what does that role play sound like? And this could be achieved either if you're actually speaking to them or if you're leaving a detailed message. So it would sound something like this. Hi, it's Adrian Bo and I work at Bo Partners Real Estate, and Adrian Bo asked me to give you a call and to see how you're going, how's the family, and how's the house that we sold you a few years ago. Now, also what I wanted to do is acknowledge the fact that you did advise me 3 months ago when I had a look at your property that you weren't looking to sell, and I completely understand and appreciate that, especially given you had one of your children completing the HSC. What I'd like to do is advise you of an off-market sale that we just transacted on last week, which is a very strong and relevant comparable to your home, and it sold far in excess of what the owners were expecting and what we were expecting, which was 4.2. Does that trigger any thoughts in your mind, given that we appraised your property at 3.8, to potentially me revisit and have another discussion at all? And if they say, no, we're completely fine, well then point number 5 is to make a note on that. And then point number 6 is using your intuition in order to create a follow-up task. And that might be in 3 months, or it might be in 3 weeks. So to wave a magic wand, every day you're sitting down in front of your CRM and you're pressing your task function, and there's 30 to 50 calls to be made that day that were scheduled either from a week ago or 3 months ago. Now, that introduction question and the first objective that I talked about, that's a critical one. I can tell you, when I was at McGrath for 26 years, the way I made every prospecting call was, hi, it's Adrian Bo from McGrath. John McGrath asked me to contact you and he passes on his regards, and I just thought I'd touch base after I viewed your property 2 months ago. So it's an incredible cut through, and if it's your lead agent, mention their name. If you're working at Ray White, you can say that Dan White or Brian White asked me to contact you and they asked me to pass on their details and also their regards and wish you and your family a Merry Christmas. I mean, you've really got to think outside the square. So that is my 6-point objective list with prospecting. You've seen how I've been able to role play it with my own personality, and it doesn't sound scripted at all. God bless and live with virtue.